I spotted him on day one, third floor window of the apartment block across from the Hotel Intercontinental Bucharest. Same window, same position, same gray coat. Morning light hit that window around 7:30, and there he was. Not moving, just watching. That's how you know. Most people miss it. They're looking for the obvious tail, the guy following too close, the car that makes too many turns. But surveillance starts before you leave your room. Surveillance starts with the watcher in the window who clocks when you wake up, when you shower, when you leave. The Securitate understood this. They were damn good at it. I was in Bucharest in late '88 as a petroleum equipment consultant. Cover story. Plausible enough, Romania had oil fields up near Ploiești, refineries that needed Western parts and expertise. The Ceausescu regime was desperate for hard currency, and they'd let Westerners in if you had something they needed. My cover was solid, technical specs, sales brochures, meeting schedules with Ministry of Industry contacts, everything clean, except I wasn't there to sell drill bits. The agency had interests in Romania. Ceausescu was playing both sides, member of the Warsaw Pact, but maintaining separate relationships with the West. He'd refused to participate in the invasion of Czechoslovakia back in '68, which made him interesting, made him unpredictable. The Soviets didn't fully trust him. We didn't fully trust him. But there were opportunities in that distrust. Information moved through cracks in totalitarian systems, and Romania had more cracks than most. My job was simple. Meet a source. A mid-level bureaucrat in the energy sector with access to Soviet petroleum data, shipping routes, pipeline capacities, reserve estimates, the kind of intelligence that seemed boring on paper but told you everything about Soviet strategic planning. The meet was scheduled for day 4 of my visit. Low-key. A cafe in the old city. Nothing fancy. But now I had the gray man in the window. I stood at my hotel room window on the 7th floor, looking across the boulevard at that 3rd floor apartment. He wasn't trying to hide. That was the message. The Securitate wanted you to know you were being watched, wanted you to feel it. Psychological pressure, make you nervous, make you careful, make you cancel your meetings and get the hell out. Standard intimidation. I smiled, poured myself coffee from the little pot they'd brought up, terrible coffee. Romanian coffee in '88 tasted like burned dirt, but it was hot, and I drank it anyway. The gray man didn't move. See, most intelligence services work surveillance in shifts. They rotate. Fresh eyes, fresh legs. You burn out watching a target for 8 hours straight. But the Securitate had manpower. They had the entire apparatus of a police state behind them. Informants on every block, drivers, shopkeepers, hotel staff. They could put 100 people on one target if they wanted to. And in Ceausescu's Romania, watching foreigners wasn't just intelligence work, it was national policy. I finished my coffee, set the cup down, didn't look at the window again. First rule of counter-surveillance: never let them know you've made them. Act natural. Move through your day like you're oblivious. Because once they know you're aware, they change tactics. They get clever. And clever surveillance is harder to track than obvious surveillance. I left the hotel around 9 o'clock, gray February morning. Bucharest in winter is one of the most depressing cities on earth. Concrete, brutalist architecture, everything the same shade of gray. People move through the streets with their heads down, shoulders hunched against the cold. Nobody smiled, nobody made eye contact. The whole damn city felt like a prison yard. Perfect operational environment, actually. In a place where everyone looks miserable and paranoid, one more miserable paranoid guy doesn't stand out. I walked east toward Piazza Universității, hands in my coat pockets, steady pace. Not too fast, not too slow. I had a meeting scheduled with a contact at the Ministry of Industry, part of my cover, so I had a legitimate reason to be moving through the city. And I had a tail Two men, one about 30 meters behind me on the same side of the street, one across the street parallel, classic box formation. They weren't subtle. Securitate rarely was. The regime wanted foreigners to know they were being followed, wanted you uncomfortable, wanted you to understand that you had no privacy here, no freedom of movement, no goddamn secrets. I kept walking. The man behind me wore a dark wool coat, fur hat, scuffed boots. Could have been anyone. Could have been a factory worker heading to his shift. Except factory workers don't maintain perfect 30-meter intervals for 12 blocks straight. The parallel tail was younger. Leather jacket, no hat, hands in his pockets. He matched my pace, exactly. When I slowed to look in the shop window, he slowed. When I sped up, he sped up. Textbook. I smiled, couldn't help it. These bastards were good at what they did, but they operated under different assumptions than Western intelligence services. In the West, surveillance was supposed to be invisible. You weren't supposed to know you were being followed. But in a totalitarian state, visibility was the point. The Securitate wanted you to know, wanted you to feel the weight of the state on your shoulders every second you were in their country. Psychological warfare. I reached the ministry building around 9:45, showed my papers at the entrance, went through the security check, sat in a gray waiting room with gray furniture and waited for my gray ministry contact to show up. He arrived around 10:15. Bureaucrat, mid-50s, tired eyes. We shook hands, went through the motions. He asked about petroleum extraction equipment. I showed him brochures. We talked about drill specifications and valve tolerances and shipping schedules, everything scripted, everything documented, everything that could be shown to someone later as proof that this was a legitimate business meeting. The whole time, I knew they were listening. Not just listening, recording. Every word. The Securitate bugged everything. Hotel rooms, ministry offices, restaurants, cafes. They had microphones in goddamn park benches. Romania in '88 was a surveillance state that made East Germany look casual. I finished the meeting around 11:30. Shook hands again. Promised to send technical specifications by mail. Left the building. The tails picked me up immediately. Same two guys, same formation, same discipline. I walked back toward the hotel, stopped at a cafe, ordered more terrible coffee, sat by the window, watched the street. The parallel tail stood across the street pretending to wait for a bus. The trailing tail walked past the cafe, circled the block, walked past again. They were rotating now, keeping it fresh, making sure I saw different faces in case I was paying attention. I was paying attention. I drank my coffee slow, took my time, let them stand out in the cold. That's a small victory in a surveillance situation. Make them work for it. Make them uncomfortable. They want to watch you? Fine. Make them earn it. Around noon, I left the cafe, walked south toward the old city. Tails stayed with me. Day 1 of 11. I didn't know it would be 11 days yet. Didn't know they'd stay on me every waking hour for nearly 2 weeks straight. Didn't know how deep this would go or how hard it would get, but I knew one thing already. This wasn't routine surveillance. The Securitate had put serious resources on me, multiple teams, good discipline, constant coverage. That meant somebody had flagged me as high priority. Somebody in the regime's intelligence apparatus had decided I was worth watching closely, which meant somebody suspected I wasn't really a petroleum equipment consultant. That night, back in my hotel room, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and ran the calculations. My meet with the source was scheduled for day 4, 3 days from now. If the Securitate maintained this level of surveillance, there was no way to make that meeting safely. They'd see it, they'd photograph it, they'd scoop up my source and throw him in a cell, and I'd be declared persona non grata and expelled from the country. Mission failure. But I couldn't just abort. The intelligence we were after was too valuable. The source had risked too much to develop this relationship, and I'd volunteered for this assignment specifically because it was hard, because it required skill, because It was the kind of operation that separated professionals from amateurs. Never quit. I'd figure it out. I'd run counter surveillance. I'd test their capabilities. I'd find the gaps in their coverage. And if there were no gaps, I'd create them. Across the boulevard, in that third floor window, I could see the gray man still watching. I closed my eyes. Day 1. Day 2 started the same way. 7:30 in the morning, gray man in the window. I watched him while I drank my coffee. Wondered if he slept there. Wondered if he had a family. Wondered if he gave a damn about any of this, or if he was just doing his job, collecting his paycheck, surviving in a system that punished anyone who stepped out of line. Didn't matter. He was the enemy. Professional enemy, nothing personal, but enemy nonetheless. I left the hotel around 8 o'clock, different route today, walked north toward Piazza Victoriae, wanted to see if they'd adjust, wanted to map their coverage. New tails, 3 this time. 1 behind, 2 parallels on opposite sides of the street. They rotated every 15 minutes, fresh faces cycling in, maintaining the box. Professional rotation. They had enough people to keep it going indefinitely. I stopped at a newsstand, bought a paper I couldn't read. The vendor barely looked at me, took my money, handed me the paper. No expression. That's how it was in Bucharest. Everyone had learned not to engage with foreigners. Too dangerous. Too likely to get you questioned later. The tails maintained their positions while I stood there pretending to read Romanian headlines. I kept walking. Circled back east. Cut through a park. The tails adjusted smoothly. No hesitation. They knew the city cold. Knew every alley, every shortcut, every choke point. This was their terrain. I was just moving through it. Around 10 o'clock, I entered a department store, government run, shelves half empty. The usual socialist paradise bullshit goods, so scarce people would line up for hours just to buy toilet paper. I moved through the aisles slow, looking at nothing, watching reflections in windows and glass display cases. 2 tails came in with me. 1 man, 1 woman. The woman was good, mid-30s, plain clothes, shopping bag. She picked up items, examined them, moved through the store like any other customer, but she maintained perfect awareness of my position, never let me out of sight. The man was less subtle. Stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching. I went up to the second floor, electronics section, empty shelves labeled for radios and televisions that didn't exist. The woman followed. The man stayed downstairs covering the exit. I pretended to look at a broken clock radio, picked it up, put it down, moved to the next aisle. The woman maintained her distance. Professional? I left the store around 10:30. The box reformed outside, different faces now, fresh rotation. They had discipline. This continued all day. Every movement tracked, every stop monitored, every interaction observed. By late afternoon, I'd identified at least 12 different surveillance operators, probably more I hadn't spotted. They rotated clean, handed me off smoothly, maintained constant coverage. That night, I sat in my hotel room and drew a map, documented every tail, every rotation, every position, started building a pattern recognition database in my head. The Securitate operated on a system. Like all intelligence services, they had procedures, standard formations, predictable rotations, and anything with a pattern could be exploited. I just had to find the weak point. Day 3, I changed my behavior, started moving erratically, random stops, sudden direction changes, backtracking, testing their reaction time. The tails adjusted instantly, no hesitation, no confusion. They'd been trained for this. They expected targets to run counter surveillance, expected you to try to shake them. Around noon, I entered the Metro Bucharest subway system, Soviet-built, deep stations, long escalators. Perfect surveillance choke point. I rode the escalator down. The tails came with me. 2 men, 1 ahead of me, 1 behind, trapping me in the middle. Classic. I boarded a train heading west, stood near the doors. The tails spread out in the car, 1 near each exit, covering all escape routes. At the next station, I waited until the last second, then stepped off just as the doors closed. One tail made it off with me. The other got trapped on the train. Small victory. The remaining tail stayed with me, didn't panic, didn't try to close distance, just maintained position, calm, professional. I rode the escalator up, exited the station. The box reformed outside, fresh tails waiting. They'd positioned people at every exit. Expected this move. They were good. Damn good. That night, back in my hotel room, I faced the reality. I couldn't shake them through movement. They had too many people, too much coverage, too much familiarity with the city. I needed a different approach. The meet with my source was scheduled for tomorrow. Day 4, a cafe called Hano Lui Manuk in the old city, noon. The source would be there with his wife, pretending to have lunch. I was supposed to sit nearby, order coffee, accidentally bump into him while leaving, exchange brief words, and receive a folded newspaper with documents hidden inside. Simple brush pass, except nothing is simple when you've got the entire Securitate surveillance apparatus watching your every move. I lay in bed and ran through options. Option 1, abort the meeting, lose the intelligence. Mission failure, unacceptable. Option 2, go to the meeting under surveillance, compromise the source, get him arrested, get him killed. Unacceptable. Option 3, find a way to break surveillance long enough to make the meeting clean. Option 3. That was the only option, but how? I stared at the ceiling, thought about patterns, thought about systems, thought about the Securitate's operational assumptions. They expected me to try to run, expected me to use tradecraft, expected counter-surveillance moves, subway tricks, direction changes, vehicular surveillance detection routes. They were prepared for all of that, so I needed to do something they weren't prepared for. I needed to stop running. The idea came around 2 o'clock in the morning. Simple. Risky as hell, but simple. I'd go to the meeting under full surveillance. Let them watch me sit in the cafe. Let them see me drink coffee. Let them observe me doing exactly what my cover story said I should do, having lunch alone in a tourist area. And I'd make the brush pass anyway, right in front of them. See, the thing about surveillance is this. They're looking for deviations from normal behavior, looking for the moment you do something suspicious, looking for the contact, the exchange, the covert signal. But if you do everything openly, everything naturally, everything exactly as your cover story dictates, they see what they expect to see. A businessman having coffee, nothing more. The brush pass would happen in plain sight. The source would bump into me, complete accident. We'd exchange apologies. He'd help me pick up my dropped napkin. Standard, polite interaction. Nothing covert about it. And in that moment, the newspaper transfer would happen, hidden in plain sight. It was risky. If they were close enough to see the exchange, we were blown. But if I played it right, if I controlled the timing and the positioning, I could make it look completely innocent, worth the risk. I finally slept around 3 o'clock. Day 4 would be the test. Day 4, noon. Hano Lui Manuk. I walked into the cafe exactly on schedule. The Securitate box stayed tight. 2 tails visible inside the cafe. Already they'd gotten there early. Smart. Standard counter-surveillance precaution. Cover the meeting site before the target arrives. I ordered coffee, sat at a table near the window, opened a map of Bucharest, played tourist, looked relaxed. The tails maintained their positions. One at the bar, one at a table near the door. My source arrived 12 minutes later, mid-40s. Wore a cheap suit. Had his wife with him, part of the cover. They sat 3 tables away, ordered lunch, didn't look at me. Perfect. I drank my coffee slow, studied my map. Looked like a bored Western businessman killing time. 20 minutes passed. The source and his wife finished their meal. Stood up, started toward the door. I stood up at the same moment. Perfect timing. We converged near the exit. The collision was gentle, accidental. His shoulder brushed mine. I dropped my napkin. He bent to pick it up. We both apologized him in Romanian, me in English. Sorry, excuse me. Nu, scuzama. He handed me my napkin. I took it. We nodded, polite, formal. Nothing unusual. He left with his wife. I returned to my table, finished my coffee, paid my bill, left the cafe 15 minutes later. The newspaper was folded inside my coat pocket. Documents inside the newspaper, clean transfer. The tails followed me out, same box, same discipline. They'd watched the entire interaction, see nothing suspicious, mission accomplished. That should have been the end of it. Successful meet, intelligence secured. I'd spend a few more days maintaining my cover and leave the country through normal channels, but the Securitate didn't ease up. Day 5, day 6, day 7, the surveillance intensified. More tails, closer coverage. They started showing up in my hotel lobby, started sitting outside my room, started making their presence more obvious, more intimidating. Something had changed. Day 8, I figured it out. The source had been compromised, not during our meeting that had gone clean, but somewhere in his chain, somewhere in his network, the Securitate had found a crack. Maybe an informant, maybe surveillance on his end, maybe just bad luck. They knew he'd passed something. They suspected I'd received it. They were putting maximum pressure on me to see what I'd do next. Would I run? Would I try to transmit the intelligence? Would I contact my handlers? That's what they were waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to expose my operational pattern. I didn't run, didn't transmit, didn't contact anyone. I maintained my cover, kept moving through the city like a petroleum equipment consultant with nothing to hide, went to more ministry meetings, visited more industrial sites, acted bored, acted tired, acted like a guy who just wanted to finish his business and go home. Day 9, day 10. The psychological pressure was immense. Imagine being watched every second, every movement tracked, every conversation monitored. Imagine knowing that one mistake, one deviation from your cover story, one moment of operational carelessness, and you're blown. Most people crack under that pressure. Most people run or freeze or make stupid decisions. But I'd been doing this work since the 50s. I'd operated in denied areas all over the world. I'd been followed by the KGB, the Stasi, the Chinese MSS, every major intelligence service on earth. The Securitate was good, but they weren't better than me. I kept my discipline, kept my routine, kept my cover intact. Day 11, that's when I made my move. I'd identified the pattern. The Securitate rotated their surveillance teams every 8 hours. Morning shift, afternoon shift, night shift. During the rotation, those 5 to 10 minutes, when the old team was pulling off and the new team was getting into position, there was a gap, small gap, maybe 3 minutes of reduced coverage. The rotation happened at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 1:45, I left my hotel, walked east toward Piazza Unire, standard route. Nothing unusual. The afternoon shift stayed with me. Tight box, 4 operators. At 1:58, I entered a shopping complex. Large building, multiple entrances. The tails came in with me. At exactly 2 o'clock, I moved. I cut through the ground floor fast, not running that would draw attention, but moving with purpose. Reached a service corridor, maintenance area, went through a door marked Intersus Forbidden. The tails lost visual for maybe 30 seconds. That was enough. I moved through the service corridor into a loading dock, exited into an alley, turned north, fast walk, not running. Behind me, I heard voices, shouting. The surveillance team had realized I'd broken contact. I kept moving, cut through 2 more alleys, reached a main street, flagged a taxi, gave the driver an address on the opposite side of the city. The taxi pulled away. I watched through the rear window. No pursuit. The new surveillance shift hadn't gotten into position yet. The old shift was scattered, trying to relocate me. I'd slipped free. The taxi dropped me in a residential neighborhood. I paid, got out, Walked 3 blocks, entered an apartment building, climbed to the 3rd floor, knocked on a door. Woman answered, mid-50s, tired face. She looked at me, nodded. Let me in. Safe house. Prearranged. The agency had contingency plans in every major city. This woman was a low-level asset, not intelligence work. She just provided emergency accommodation when needed, knew not to ask questions, knew to keep her mouth shut. I stayed there for 6 hours. At 8 o'clock that night, I left through a different exit, walked to the train station, bought a ticket for Budapest, legitimate ticket, legitimate travel, crossed the border around midnight, 11 days. That's how long it took to run the operation, make the meat, secure the intelligence, and slip free of the Securitate's surveillance net. 11 days of constant pressure, constant observation, constant psychological warfare. But I got out. The intelligence I'd secured Soviet petroleum data hidden in that newspaper was delivered to Langley 2 weeks later. It provided critical information about Warsaw Pact energy vulnerabilities, helped inform policy decisions during the final years of the Cold War. Worth it. The source wasn't so lucky. 3 months after I left Romania, he disappeared. The Securitate had eventually figured out he was the leak. They arrested him, interrogated him. He spent 2 years in prison before the revolution toppled Ceausescu in '89. Last I heard, he survived. Got out, built a new life after the regime fell. But that's the cost of this work. That's what intelligence operations demand. People risk everything, put their lives on the line, and sometimes they pay the price. All I could do was make sure that risk meant something. Make sure the intelligence they provided actually mattered. Make sure their sacrifice wasn't wasted. Let me tell you what that 11-day operation taught me about surveillance and counter-surveillance, because this matters. This is the technical heart of the work. First, never assume you're clean. In any denied area, any totalitarian state, any hostile environment, assume you're being watched from the moment you enter the country. Assume your hotel room is bugged. Assume your phone is tapped. Assume everyone you interact with is either an informant or under surveillance themselves. Paranoia isn't a weakness in this work. Paranoia is professionalism. The Securitate had resources that would shock most people. They had informant networks that penetrated every level of society. Block wardens who reported on everyone living in their building. Shopkeepers who noted which foreigners bought what. Taxi drivers who logged every destination. Hotel staff who searched your room while you were out. You weren't just fighting a surveillance team. You were fighting an entire system designed to monitor and control. Second, understand the surveillance pattern before you try to break it. Most amateur operators make the mistake of trying to shake surveillance immediately. They see a tail and they run. Big mistake. Because if you run before you understand the pattern, you're just guessing. You don't know how many people they have, don't know their rotation schedule, don't know their capabilities. I spent 8 days mapping the Securitate's pattern before I made my break. 8 days of documentation. Every tail identified, every rotation timed, every formation documented. By day 8, I knew exactly how they operated, knew their shift changes, knew their gaps, knew their assumptions. That knowledge made the difference. When I finally moved on day 11, I wasn't guessing. I was executing a plan based on confirmed intelligence about their operational pattern. Third, physical fitness is non-negotiable. You think you can outrun surveillance if you can't run 3 miles without stopping? You think you can maintain operational discipline under pressure if you're tired, weak, soft? Hell no. I was 58 years old during that Romania operation. 58. Most guys my age were retired, sitting in recliners, watching television. I was running surveillance detection routes through Eastern European cities in the middle of winter. Why? Because I stayed fit. Because I understood that operational capability depends on physical capability. Because I never stopped training, never stopped maintaining readiness. Your body is your primary operational tool. Treat it like a weapon. Keep it sharp. Keep it ready. Those 3 minutes when I broke free in that shopping complex, I was moving fast through corridors, upstairs, through service areas. If I'd been out of shape, winded, slow, I wouldn't have made it. The surveillance team would have caught up. Game over. Fitness gave me the capability to execute when it mattered. Never forget that. 11 days under Securitate surveillance. 11 days of psychological pressure. 11 days of disciplined counter-surveillance and one successful intelligence operation that justified every second of it. That's the work. People ask me sometimes why I kept doing this, why I kept volunteering for hard operations in denied areas when I could have taken easier assignments, when I could have retired, when I could have stepped back and let younger guys take the risks. Simple answer, because I'm a warrior, and a warrior is defined by the desire to be involved, not by killing, not by violence, but by the fundamental drive to be present when important things are happening. That operation in Romania mattered. The intelligence we secured mattered. The risks we took mattered. I wanted to be involved in that, wanted to contribute, wanted to be part of something that actually made a difference in the larger strategic picture. That's what drives every decision I made in this career. Volunteer for everything. Never quit. Stay fit. Maintain discipline. Be present when it counts. The Securitate taught me something important during those 11 days. They taught me that even the most sophisticated surveillance apparatus has vulnerabilities. Even the most totalitarian system has cracks. Even the most overwhelming pressure can be endured and overcome through discipline and patience. They threw everything they had at me, hundreds of surveillance operators, complete control of the environment, unlimited resources, the full weight of a police state, and I still got out. Not through luck, not through magic, through preparation, through discipline, through understanding the pattern and exploiting the gap. That's what this work demands. That's what separates professionals from amateurs. That's what makes the difference between successful operations and catastrophic failures. You study the enemy, you understand their capabilities, you find the weakness, you exploit it. You complete the mission. That's it. No feet on the ground means you can't accomplish the mission. So you put feet on the ground, you accept the risk, you execute the plan, you bring back the intelligence. The Securitate never caught me. They tried, they came close, but they never caught me because I never quit. 11 days, one successful operation, one intelligence asset who paid the price but survived, one small victory in a larger war that eventually brought down the entire communist system in Eastern Europe, worth every second. That's the warrior's path. That's the life I chose. That's the standard I maintained for 50 years of operational service, and I'd do it again tomorrow. Never quit.